start?
You start.
I look ratchet.
I don't think you're supposed to talk.
Oh.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for coming and taking time out of your day to come listen to my short demonstrational speech. My topic that I have to discuss with you all today is one that I'm sure you're all familiar with and enjoy, which is tie-dye. So knowing that you're all pretty creative people, I'm sure you've done it once or twice before, but today I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about the background, preparation, and some techniques to do a few different patterns in a few simple steps. So we're going to start out with the background. So I'm sure when I mention tie-dye, your mind goes straight to the 60s and the usual hippie attire. But that's not where tie-dye actually originated from. It originated from places like India and Africa as early as the 6th century. It became big in America when this man named Don Price decided he was going to market something called Rit dye. Rit dye is a dye that makes your colors more vibrant. So by doing this, he decided to go to a neighborhood that was populated with a bunch of hippies to find artists that could use it. He did this successfully. He found two that used the dye on fabric. So he took the fabric that they used to a fashion designer. The fashion designer then incorporated it into their clothing line, and stars like Janis Joplin and many more like them started wearing them in their performance and in their day-to-day lives. So then their fans decided they want to have clothes like them, which essentially created the bandwagon of tie-dye in America. Now that we've covered a little bit of the background, we can start talking about the preparation. The materials that you need for this are a t-shirt, a dye, bottles, you need some trash bags or newspapers to clean up, or not clean up, but put around your working area because it gets pretty messy, and you will need gloves because you don't want to stain your hands, and you also need bottles or buckets to put the dye into. Now, all these materials are pretty easy to get a hold of. They're at your local Walmart or convenience store. But some stores even sell kits, which make it that much more easier to get everything together. For my examples that I will be showing you momentarily, I did use a kit to make. There was a wide variety of kits available. Some had 3 bottles with 3 color schemes, which is the one I used. There was also a kit that had very large bottles in case you were going to dye
A shit ton of clothes.
a shit ton of clothes. There was also some that had a very large assortment of colors. So there's definitely a variety, you don't have to worry about that. Now that we've talked about the preparation, we can talk about the fun part, which is actually tie-dyeing. Those of you that know, there's many different types of patterns you can do, but today we're going to talk about the 3 most common and simple. First, we're going to talk about the spiral. So the first step to make this design would be to wet the fabric. You want to wet the fabric so that your dye absorbs into the fabric so that your final material product is more vibrant. So then you're going to move on to your second step, which is to lay your shirt out, and you're going to want to pick the center where you want your spiral to be, and you're going to twist it. So you're going to keep twisting that until your shirt is in a spiral shape. Once you have that, you're going to want to move on to your third step. Once you do that, you're going to want to add the rubber bands. When you add the rubber bands, you're going to want to put them fully across, and you're going to make wedge shapes with it. Once you've added the rubber bands, you're going to move on to step 4, which is to add the dye. You're going to put 1 color per wedge shape. Finally, you're going to move on to your last step, which is to let it sit, dry, and you're going to wash it. Drying it is a very critical step because the longer you let it dry, the more it's going to absorb into the fabric. Once you've decided that it's dry enough, you're going to cut your rubber bands off and put it in the washer on cold water by itself so your colors don't run, and your finished product will look similar to this.
Wow.
All right. So now we're going to move on to our second design, which is the stripes. So with the stripes design, you're going to do the same first step as the previous. You're going to wet your fabric. The second step is going to be to lay out your shirt, and you're going to pleat it. You pleat it in the direction that you want your stripes to be. Once it's pleated, you're going to move on to step number 3, which is applying your rubber bands. The width at which you apply your rubber bands is going to be the width of the stripes. So once you have that, you're going to move on to step 4, which is to dye the clothing. You're going to dye in the sections that you have applied or created with your rubber bands. So once you've done that, you're going to move on to step number 5, which is to sit, dry, and wash. And your final product will look similar to this.
Ooh.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to our last design, which is the bullseye. So the bullseye is going to be the first step, which is the same as all the rest of the steps. You're going to wet the clothing. So then your second step will be to lay out your shirt, and you're going to pick where you want the center of your bullseye to be. You're going to pinch it and pull it all the way up. Your third step is going to apply the rubber bands to that which you have. Your fourth step is going to be apply the dye to the sections that you have created with your rubber bands. And your fifth step is going to let it sit, dry, and to wash it. And your final product will look like this. Okay, so now that you've heard what I've had to say, you can now that you know the task and know how to make it last, there's no stopping your newfound desire to tie-dye all the apparel you see fit. So once again, I'd like to thank you all for coming and listening to my speech. Thanks.